This next example requires graphing a piecewise function. So now we can do this problem both by hand and with a calculator using technology. If I wanted to do this problem by hand, I would have to make a table, and on this table I would have to put x's on one side and y's on the other side. Now in this particular case, the -1 is going to be called like the border basically. So what I'm going to do is in the middle of the table I'm going to put -1, and then before that point I'm going to pick numbers that are smaller than -1, maybe 2 or 3 of them, so like for example -2 and -3. And after -1 I'm going to pick a few numbers again, so maybe 0 or 1, just randomly, and make sure that the -1 makes it to the table because it's an important part. It's actually going to be a place where a split happens. So to remind me that something strange is going on at -1, I'm going to right away put a little dashed line right here where x would be equal to -1, because this dashed line is going to be there to remind me that on one hand I'm going to have a graph, on the other side I'm going to have a different graph. So that's where the cutoff happens. So that way I don't, extend the lines too far out. Now, when you are investigating what -3 does, you'll have to remember that -3 satisfies the first condition, and so therefore -3 has to be plugged into the first equation. So when I do that, -3 gives me 2 times -3 minus 1, which is at the end -7. So -3 as input gives us -7 as output, so down here. And again, when I plug in -2, it will satisfy the first equation again. So -2 goes into the first equation, and we end up with -5 as a solution. So when x is -2, the y is going to be a -5. So that's the second point. And now -1 itself. Now, when I plug in -1, it makes the second equation or the second inequality, I should say, it makes that one true. So therefore, for the -1, I have to use the second equation, -3x plus 4. Keep in mind that x is -1. So this will be 7 at the end. So when x is -1, the output is actually 7. So on the dashed line, the point is going to be 7. So that's going to be a solid point. Now, what about the one down here? Now, if I extend the line all the way to the border, it's going to hit the point right there, where the point would be -3. So at that location, I'm going to put a circle, but it's an open circle. So this reminds me that this is where the line would have ended if it touched the border -1. However, in this case, the border -1 would have the point up here at 7. Then if I do 0, 0 would make, again, the second equation satisfied. So 0 would be plugged into the second equation to give us at the end 4. So when x is 0, the y is 4, I get that point. And then finally, when x is 1, the second equation is going to be used again, and the output is 1. So when x is 1, the y is going to be a 1. So those are the coordinates, and I plug them in and I connect them, and that's pretty much it. That's how the graph is going to end. So the graph is made up of two lines, one that points up and one that points down, and there's a gap between the two lines, and it is what it is. So this is how you would do it by hand. But again, you are not required to do this by hand. You can use calculators to do this. So if you have a TI-83 or 84, now is a good time to turn it on and watch what we're going to do next to graph this problem. So this is my TI-83 or 84 view. I'm using a TI-84 plus CE in this screen, but it works the same way for TI-83s and 84s, regardless of which model you have. Now, since this is our first time working on a calculator, let's go ahead and set it all up so that we don't have any errors for the rest of the semester. So what I'm going to do next is clear your calculator memory. So this way, if you have any errors or if you have any programs saved or whatever, they're going to disappear so that we're all starting with a brand new calculator as if it was purchased just today and opened out of the box. So if you're using a used calculator or if you're borrowing a calculator from a friend or whatever, this will be a good thing to do to reset the calculator memory. And the way we do that is we go and first turn it on with the on button. And once it's on, we click second and plus sign. That gets us into the memory menu. And if you see MEM is in blue, and if you have a TI-83, it will be in yellow. So anything in blue or yellow requires first clicking the second button. Now on this list, there's a bunch of commands that we can use. I'm going to pick option number 7. On the screen, it says reset. Now, how can I get down here? I can click my arrow down a few times until I get to 7. Then once I get to 7, I click enter, or, I could do a 7 on my keyboard and it will take me straight to that setting without having to click enter or anything. So I'm going to click down a few times, then click enter, and it will say, do you want me to reset everything, all RAM or the defaults? I'm going to say all RAM. So it's already on 1, so I'm just going to click enter one more time. And it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to do this? Because once I do this, it's going to erase all the settings from the calculator. So if you have, a calculator you're using for physics and you've saved some software in there or some apps in there, they will get deleted once we do this. So I'm going to say, yes, reset everything. And this is number 2. So I can go down and then click enter, or I could just select 2 on my keyboard and it will do it for me. So 2, enter, and there it is. Your screen may look a little bit different with some different writing, but it's gonna say RAM cleared on the bottom. So that's great. Now we've cleared the memory. So now let's go ahead and try to plug the function into the calculator. To do that, to graph anything, we're going to go to the Y menu, which is the top left corner. Mine's have colors, yours may not have colors, it doesn't really matter. Just plug in the function into this Y1. Now, because I have a piecewise function, I'm going to be a little bit more careful. So what I'm going to have to do is type the equation to x minus 1 first by putting parentheses around it. So I'm going to put 2 and then x. A convenient way to find x is to just click this button right next to alpha. That puts an x on your screen. And then big ol' minus sign and then 1. Now there are 2 minuses on your keyboard. There's 1 next to the 6 and there's 1 underneath the 3. The 1 underneath the 3 has little parentheses around it. That would be used if you want to indicate that a number is negative. So like -4 or -5. Not when you're subtracting 2 values. When you're subtracting 2 values, you use the big ol' minus sign right next to 6. Then close the parentheses. Now, because this is a piecewise function, I have to add some extra information. I have to tell the calculator that x is supposed to be less than -1. So I'm going to put new parentheses, type x again, and then I have to put less than. To find less than, click second, then click on the math button. So that gets you into the test menu. It's either in blue or yellow again, that's why I clicked second first. So second, and then test gets you in here, and find which one is the less than. Mine is number 5. So again, you can either click down a few times to get there, or you can just click on your keyboard 5, and it will put less than on your screen. And now we need to put -1 because that's the number in the condition. -1 is negative, and then 1. So notice how I used the little minus sign here, whereas I used the big ol' minus sign earlier, because earlier I was subtracting 2 numbers. Right now I'm just saying that the 1 is supposed to be negative. Then close the parentheses, and that's the end of the first line of my piecewise function. Now there's a second line on the piecewise function, so I'm going to put a plus sign, then put parentheses again, and then type the equation on the second line, which is -3, then x plus the 4, close the parentheses, then put the condition. The condition is x greater than or equal to -1. So again, I put it inside its own parentheses. Parentheses, x greater than or equal to, so that's second, and then click on the math button to enter the test menu, and figure out where the greater than or equal to belongs. It's in number 4, so I can go down a few times, then click enter to select that guy. And my number is -1, so tiny little minus sign, 1, close parentheses. I like to click enter, that way I get to the next line. If I have to put another equation, I can put that here, but for now, it is saved into the calculator. So to see the graph, all you have to do is click on graph, and you'll pretty much see what I'm seeing on my screen. Yours may look black instead of blue or red or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but that's what the graph looks like. And from here, we can extract some information to be able to graph the function. We can do it in a few different ways. So for example, we can click second and then graph. That puts us in the table menu. So we can see when x is 0, the y is 4, when x is 1, y is 1. And if I go up that table, I can see additional numbers that I can now grab and put on my table on the paper in order to help me graph the function. So I can either extract the information from this nice organized table, or if you wanted to, you can go back to graph and then click on trace. So when you click on trace, it puts a little cursor on the screen and it tells you this point is 0 with a y coordinate of 4. And the nice thing about this is you can select whatever numbers you prefer. So like for example, you may like the point -5. So you can click that on your keyboard and then hit enter, and it will tell you when x is -5, the y is -11. Somebody else may say, okay, I want to know what happens when x is -2, for example. And again, it will tell you when x is -2, the y is -5. If you click on -1, you'll notice that the calculator goes to the top. That's where the closed circle was on the paper. So you'll know that when x is -1, y is 7. So if you want to know what this one is, you will have to kind of read it off on the side. It's about -3. That's why our open circle was around -3. Or you can try to do like some guesswork. So you can try to do maybe -1.0 something something something. So 1 point, for example, 001. That will put you super close, but not exactly at -1. So you can see it's approximately -3 on the y. So that's where the open circle is going to have to be written down. So again, that's a quick way to do it with a calculator, and it gives you the same exact graph.